Welcome everybody to Dataedo Talks today. Today we're going to concentrate on the profiling feature. I have a tip about how to use that, as well as, introduction to it, how to use it, and then um, towards the end we'll have a sneak peek, hopefully into some future development there. And at the end, we'll have a special announcement about future of Dataedo, kind of an exciting announcement. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Richard, the Data Success Manager here at Dataedo. And so my job, of course, is to help everybody learn the tool and get the most out of it. So that's kind of why we're here today, is just to cover this profiling feature and talk about how to use it and see, get you thinking about ways that you can enhance your data cataloging efforts, your documentation efforts, by utilizing the profiling feature. So as we always do here, the format is that I will first give a short tip about usage of Dataedo. So I'm going to share my screen. And here we are, Dataedo desktop version 24.1, 0.4 actually. But the thing I want to talk about today is related to the profiling feature, and that is the sample data. Those of you who have been around for a while, you may remember that sample data historically was limited to being seen in the profiling module, or in the profiling feature. We now have this sample data tab right here in the main section of Dataedo Desktop. And the purpose of this, of course, is so that you can see sample data, 10 rows of sample data there from the table that we have selected. You can tell it's selected because it's in bold there. And you run that, you get 10 rows of sample data. You can refresh that as needed right here. The value of this, obviously, is to be able to see into this table and start to understand what is there. A thing to know here, of course, is that the data is preview only. It's never saved to your repository. So this is an exception to that rule, that we say we never look at data in your data sources. Of course, to get sample data, you have to look at that. Same thing for profiling. You have to actually look at the data to be able to do that profiling and look at the sample data. The other thing to know here is that this sample data persists only for this session because it's not saved to the repository. If you exit the desktop client and come back in later and you want to look at sample data again, you would have to run it again. And it persists throughout this session. So evidence of that is I actually ran that sample data earlier on another table up here. It is right here, payment methods. And you can see that is still there from when I ran it before. Of course, if I wanted to refresh it, I could. All right. So how do we use this? Let me go back to that first table here. One thing that I found a little bit difficult years ago when I was writing descriptions for a data warehouse that I was not familiar with, is that I had to open dbeaver on one monitor screen and Dataedo on another monitor screen. And basically I was running sample data in dbeaver, table by table, or maybe a selection of columns or whatever over there. So I could look at that sample data and use that as a reference as I was writing descriptions, just to make sure that I was describing the columns and the tables correctly. You can now do that directly in Dataedo. You can do this by simply grabbing this tab, pull it down, and dock it at the bottom of your screen. And now I have on the top half of my screen the columns right there, and you can see all of those empty descriptions that need to be defined. And down here, I've got the sample data that I can use as a reference as I work on those descriptions. For example, it helps me to know, are the IDs numeric or are they containing characters? What kind of values are in there? This payment method right here, it helps me know what are the possible values if I need to. Just to make sure that I have that right, I can jump over to the payment methods table very quickly and verify, yep, there's only 4 of them, and here's what they mean. So it allows me to quickly look at that sample data and make sure that the descriptions are accurate as I'm defining them. So I find that very useful. Back into the profiling module. I am here in version 24.1. So this is as of the current version and what profiling looks like here. So to get to profiling, of course, you can go to it in the ribbon or over here in the navigation bar over here. So in the navigation, you can right click and go to data profiling. Again, for those of you who have been around for a while, you may remember a time when you could choose a particular table and profile just one table at a time. That has been expanded. We always look at the entire connection at one time. So the ability, wherever you enter, you're going to look at the entire collection data, the entire data source. So if I go to data profiling here, it's going to open another window. There it is right there. And you'll see I've already run the profiling over here. You can see, some of the things that are available as I have already done the profiling. But before I get very deep into that section, I do want to talk about profiling settings. I mentioned that, of course, in order to run profiling, you have to look at Dataedo has to read the actual data in these data tables. So that is, in some instances, there's a security concern there entirely based on your internal security requirements. And so we have these settings here where you can control what happens with the profiling module. Of course, the first one right here is you can turn it on or turn it off. And profiling runs in the desktop client. So of course, only those people who have editor licenses even have access to this. So this is basically, can those people with editor licenses run profiling or not? So assuming you want to let them run it, it runs while they are here. And as I mentioned, they would have access to sample data, for example, only in this session. It's not saved. The next one here is specifically about saving the profiling results. Once they run it, can they save it or not? So this is, again, a security level. You may have a need to let the editors see the profiling, but not save it for other users. And there's also a security setting in the portal that allows you to choose which read-only or which read-only viewers can actually see the profiled results or not. So there's a couple of levels there. But let's say we want to let the editors run it and we want to let them save the results. Even within that, we can get more granular and say, those those columns in your data systems that, for example, have an assignment of sensitive PII according to the PII classification, you can disable that if you wanted. So you just click it to disable. That is for the distributions. And over here, we've got it for the values. So you can do that for each of the classifications that you use within your data catalog. So right here, you can see I've got it disabled PII for sensitive data for both the values and the distribution. For my GDPR, I've got it disabled for personal data. So that's the way you can define what you're able to do with regards to the profiling module. Can people run it? Can they save it? And which types of data are allowed to be profiled? All right, so I'm going to cancel that. Now, the next thing here, let's talk about the actual profiling. You can do full profiling. You can profile only the distributions or only the values. I'm not going to run this because it would take a minute for it to run. When you select what you want to actually be profiled, here is where you could say profile only this table or profile, a select few of these tables. You can choose here which ones you want to profile. Thing to know here, pretty important, is that even though you can't see the columns, they are selected. If you choose a table, it will choose all of the columns within that. If for some reason you didn't want to do some column, you could remove it, that way. But by default, if you select one of these tables, it will select all of the columns. Likewise, if you select everything, again, the columns will be selected in there. So even though you can't say them, they are selected for profiling. And I'm not going to get into everything over here on this panel. It does give you information about what has happened in the past. And then, if you were to go ahead and profile again, it would show you what the current state of all that profiling is. Let's look at this table right here. Notice these columns have been blocked. These are the columns that were marked under PII as sensitive data. So phone number, fax number, email address, password, login name, preferred name, search name. Those are all things that were marked as sensitive PII. And so it does not run the profiling on those. And rather than just leaving it blank, so you think maybe there's an error, it does have that blocked symbol. That there is also a blocked notation in the portal for these rows that says that the profiling was disabled for them. And then, of course, you have the profiling results over here, column by column. Double click to open those, and column by column, you have all of your profiling results. I don't want to get into what all of these are. I'm going to let Piotr talk more about that, but I do want to talk about sample values again. So I opened the table row right there, and actually let's use the same one we used before, customer transactions. And you can see I've got it open. I can preview sample rows. Same thing as I was doing in the front end where I had that tab. This is the same thing. The cool thing here is you can actually put a filter on these. So notice right here, I've got a column, the payment method ID. We looked at that one before. I'm going to actually put a filter on here for payment method. Make sure I spell it right. There, and I'm going to make this equal to, let's make it 4. These look like those are refunds. So make that equal to 4. And when I run this, notice my sample data changed. Be very careful with these filters. And the reason is this where you refresh is context sensitive. And by that, I mean, notice in my sample data, I've got those rows where payment method ID is 4. If I go over here, open this up, payment method ID in my values list, sample values here, all 4 values are there. In order to get that filter applied here, I have to refresh it there. And notice I now have only that one. Again, it only refreshed that one column. It did not refresh it for all of the other columns in here. So all of these others will still include values that are not refunds. So if I look, for example, at transaction amount, notice my values, they go from a negative, which is a refund, up here to a max with a positive. That's not a refund, of course. So you can see it didn't refresh that column. To get around this and to be safe, the easiest thing is just choose the entire table and profile it again. And you'll notice when this runs, I now have only negative values because they were refunds. So be very careful as you do this that you remember what it is you've done. My recommendation is if you put a filter on here, just be sure to reprofile the entire table. To take this off, you can simply delete this and make sure that it ran. I can run that right there. You can see it ran. And then I am going to profile that entire table again to make sure that all of the rows are profiled for the entire data set. Any questions up to this point or comments? I see something in the chat.
Yeah, Richard, there was one in chat. So Martin asked, we work with a lot of regulated data. Is that profiling done on-prem, or does the data profiling open a portal outside of our organization?
My understanding is it does it on-prem. Piotr, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
No, we don't get the data to our servers at any point. So it's all in your environment. We don't have access to that.
Okay, good. And as far as the aggregations go, that happens within the Dataedo engine, right? So, or in the repository.
Yeah, and this even what we're looking at right now, it's not even saved currently.
Correct. Yeah, this is, again, preview only data, not saved to the repository. All right, good. Okay, the final thing I want to give Piotr plenty of time here. You do have the ability to download and run or schedule a refresh of the profiling so that, people who are using this will always have fresh and up-to-date profiling results. That is true up through version 24.1. In 24.2, you won't have to download this command file. You'll be able to run it with an onboard scheduler. And just very briefly to show you what this looks like, I'm in 24.2 right here. Up here in the ribbon, we have the scheduler. And you were able to, basically add a schedule right there. You choose which ones it wants to update, whether it's import changes or refresh the profiling, and you just follow the steps to get through there. And then you can see on here, the status of all of the things that I scheduled. You can see which ones have run already and which ones have not run. You can look at the results of those. All of that sort of thing is available now, or will be available on board in 24.2. Please note that if you want to set this up after you upgrade to the new version, talk to me or support, because there is some behind the scenes setup that needs to be done. You don't just run this. There is some setup required. But that is coming, and that'll make using the scheduler more robust and simpler in the long run. All right. Any questions on that? All right. If not, I am going to hand off to Piotr, and we're going to learn about some really exciting things that are up and coming.
Thank you, Richard. Well, actually, I'd like to present some ideas. It doesn't mean everything I show will come to the product. I'm open for your feedback. It would be great to learn that you find something interesting and you'd like that in the product. In that case, feel free to speak or put in the chat. But once you do, mention the name of the you know, of the analytic or something, so that, you know, when I browse the history, I'll know. So yeah, these will be just concepts. Some of them will get into the product. And the last couple of minutes, I'll have the announcement that Richard mentioned. Okay, so let's dive into the ideas for the profiling that we have at the moment at Dataedo. All right. So first, table view. This is a screenshot I noticed, I found for Google BigQuery. What I like about it is that you can you have a one screen with the summary of profiling for various columns. We could do something similar for the null and unique. We have this nice sparkline, this like this widget we could use instead of that. So yeah, I definitely like to see something similar to that. Maybe even instead of this table, we could also do some a nice distribution chart or something like that. Okay, speaking of distribution, you might know that we have a distribution for numerical values, right? So what's the frequency of different brackets of values? I'm proposing something for dates, something like that. It's also something I've seen somewhere, and it really looks good to profile a date. Hubert mentioned that he likes the start and the end date, but I like to see so much more about the date. So this is one of the actual date columns in our database. You can see this broken down by month. Over here, this is the same for years. Day of week, right? It's order date, so you know you can see that Saturday and Sunday are not so busy. Day of the year, right? You can see that Christmas time is very silent. Week of the year, similar story here. It dies closer to the end of the year. Week of the year and day of the month, and also an hour or maybe even a minute of the hour. So like a full you know, X-ray of the date columns. For numerical values, we could add a chart like this, analytic like this, that will show you how many negative values there are, how many zero values there are, and how many positive values there are, out of those that are not null, obviously. We have a distribution, but we don't present it in that way. Median, quartiles, and percentiles. So median is the value in the middle. If you sort values you know, in ascending order, then median is the typical value. The first and third quartile mark the 50%, the median 50%, and the percentiles do the same, but not with quarters, but they cut the set into 100 pieces. So we could identify you know, those three quartiles, and maybe top 10th and 19th, so 10th and 19th percentile, cutting off the extreme 10% on the both sides, and we could, you know, put it into our distribution chart. This would be quite useful. Frequency. So we have a chart that might seem familiar. I use just numbers for this example, but this could be some text values or some labels, right? So you can see that which values are most popular. So what we can do here, I'd like to slightly improve this presentation. This one is slightly updated to the current one, and I'd like to also add the pie charts. So the pie chart will show you out, you know, the top 10%, the top 10 values. What's the percentage, the actual percentage of the whole values, and we could do the same for rows. So to have two pie charts. If the value of those values, top values, is not larger than, I don't know, say 5 or something, we could even show the specific values. For 10, it will be too much, I feel. I think this is called Pareto chart, although I'm not 100% sure. So we have a chart. So I think this is called if we add the line, that would be called Pareto chart. So what are the most popular values and how quickly they add up to to I don't know 80% of values or so. This is a level higher. This is the groups of frequencies. So this shows that values that are unique, that occur just once, we have 700 of those values. Then values that occur twice, 200, and so on. And you can see a chart broken broken like that. And it's interesting, although I'm not sure if you can really read something useful from that. I've seen it somewhere, and I did it for one of my columns, but I'm not 100% sure I would know what to do with this information. This is slightly different approach. So checking the 10% of values, the 10% of values are just a very small fraction of all the values, but they're a much bigger fraction of the rows, so they are quite popular. If there will be equal, it will mean that all the values are equally popular, but you can see that they dominate. Similar for 20% in some other example. So over here is another take how to present. Still not sure if this is very clear to see. So basically the point of that is the top values, how much they populate the data set. But again, if you can see it in this chart, then it's good. If you don't, I totally understand. I will be researching some other ways to present that. Time. Another thing which I would find very useful for analyzing my data sets would be looking at them from the time perspective. And you can take two time dimensions. So every column has an ID. Almost every table has an ID column, which is auto increment, which sorts all the rows. So you can look at them think of the time as the rows that are coming into the table. By the way, Richard, if you could please track the time. I don't see the clock here, and if we are like 10 minutes to the end, let me know.
Yeah, we have 10 minutes to the end exactly.
Okay. All right, so this is an idea to analyze how the rows were coming to the table based on, it could be done by ID, broken down by brackets, equal brackets, or in this case, created at column. A lot of tables have created that or created there or something similar like that, and we could do a chart like that, which we also see was a table that was populated, equally over time, or there were jumps. The same, we could do something slightly different, similar for columns. We could see for IDs and also for dates, when was the first and last time it was used. It was not empty, right? If you have a column, we tell you right now that half of the values, for instance, are empty, but you don't know if it's equally spread out, or is it a column that is not used anymore, or is it a column that was we just started using. So this chart for this particular column could tell you more about the time when it was used. Something more advanced, we could break down the whole column into chart like that, months or years, so you can see that this column was pretty much used all the time, except just for half of the rows, more or less. And this is the same, but for percentages, so you can see more clearly. Level up and for values, right? We have those top popular values, but again, you could ask a question. Okay, but these values are popular, but are they recent, or they exist from the day one of the data set? So over here we can see the data set has 1.8 million rows, and you can see that most of them are appearing almost from day one, but Power BI and SSIS, they started appearing in the middle of the day. So it gives you an information on is it a new value or not, or is it not being used anymore. Same concept here, except displayed in a form of a sparkline, like a chart. String profiling. We could analyze patterns, and there are two types. One is by char. So for email, it's not very useful because yeah, it doesn't tell you a lot. But for phone numbers, it's very, very useful. And we have another one which could identify patterns for words. So in this case, for emails, it's perfect, right? This is what you'd expect for email patterns in a column, right? Similarly, we could detect common words that are appearing in the data set. So our top values considers all of them as different values, but they're, as you can see, they're very, very similar. And maybe there's a way we could identify those very popular prefixes of values. We could count the for text fields, for string fields, we could calculate number of words, the average, minimum, or maximum, or maybe even do like a distribution. How many lines there are? It's very interesting. If it's if it's a multi-line text or not. Maybe you could also count digits or percentage of strings that are only digits. That also gives you a lot of information. We could try to detect the data type. Is it a date, right? It's a string, but maybe it's encoding a date or a number, or maybe it's an XML or JSON or even HTML or Markdown, right? Maybe there are some other types of higher level types that you'd like to detect in the repository. Data quality, we could identify values for strings and dates that are actually not values, right? They're just placeholders, and we could this list could be predefined, but you could modify the list, and then we would scan and tell you, okay, here's, oh, Tom, I see you're trying to draw something. Yeah, cardinality, how many null values there are, how many rows, we have that already. We can also calculate what's the average, how often the average value occurs, and how unique the values are. They're not really unique because they're multiplied. Another thing that I did recently for my data set was to see if it's continuous. So for ID column, for instance, or for a date, I would like to see, are there any gaps? There was an invoice ID, and I assumed that all the invoice IDs are used, but then I did this analytic and I saw, okay, there are 900 missing values, something I could look into, I should look into. So yeah, another interesting thing I don't see right away from the data set. We could do something specific for emails, and we could do most popular domains. If we detect it's an email, we could analyze domains, and we could even analyze top level domains, right? So is it com, or another interesting insight. You could also identify like the classes of domains. So is it government, education, is it public service like Gmail or disposable email? We could also summarize the profiling, so all the charts, all the information into something more readable to humans. So make a summary, basically like ChatGPT would, right? But that would be like a rule-based. And entropy. Entropy is a measure of chaos or randomness. They're almost the same. So there's a formula for that, and basically high entropy means that values appear to be random, they are equally spread out, and low entropy means that some values are way more probable than others, right? So the set is dominated by some values. I believe that in entropy equal to 0 would mean that there's just one value, and 100% sure that it's gonna be there, right, in the column, in any random row. Okay, and I think that's yeah, that's that.
And Piotr, while you were chatting, Martin asked, for data quality, could the users enter their own pattern recognition scenarios?
I listed the values, and a user will be able to add more values of their own, and there will be, that's another topic. That there will be a completely separate data quality module where there will be more advanced rules. Yeah, that's this presentation was mostly about just the profiling, so scanning and showing you what is, not really showing you what's right and what's wrong, right? All right, we have 2 minutes. Yeah.
Good. Before you do your announcement, Piotr, just two comments here in the chat. One is please no pie charts, and the other one from Alex. He sent in an image there of an example that he likes. So maybe
Okay.
something to pull down and look at.
All right, thanks for that. Any suggestions are welcome. So if you know any visual or any feature that other tools do, please share. Would be great to hear. No pie charts. Okay, noted. Can promise that. All right, so for the announcement, we've decided that we want to focus on development of our Dataedo portal product, and slowly decommission the desktop. Desktop will be still there for a while. You'll still be able to use it. For new customers, we'll be showing just the portal, and desktop will be its primary use will be it will be called agent. I mean, one version of the desktop will be called agent, and it will be installed somewhere, or maybe multiple instances, and taking those scanning jobs. Right, the scheduler will send them jobs to scan different sources. Right, so this is something we actually are releasing right now, and yeah, by the end of the year, we'd like to have a web product be fully capable. That's our plan. So that's a big announcement, and I hope you're excited and nobody is disappointed.
Good. Thank you all. Hopefully today was a useful session, and obviously feedback is welcome. So thanks for joining, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Cheers. Thanks a lot.
Thank you all.